admitting and taking a long time actually to admit or kicking people out.
Okay. I'll
So-
give it just one moment then for him.
Yeah, it's kind of stuck on him joining right now.
It's done that to me before too. I don't really know why.
Ethan's the last. Yeah, it's just being a struggle to get him in here.
Maybe text him and let him know.
Yeah, he just texted me. Yeah, it's not sure what the problem is.
Okay.
It's just a loop of him joining, clicking admit, lagging, him joining again. Give me one more second to try one more thing.
Okay.
All right. I think, is he in now? No, he left. He'll be back.
Okay. If you think that he's on his way in, then we can just go ahead and get started, and then we'll mark him when he is able to make it in. Okay, so it's
Worst case
6:04.
scenario, he can call in with the phone. Like that'll almost certainly work.
Yes, that is correct. Okay. Just in the interest of time, I think I'm going to go ahead and get started, and we'll have him in here soon. I'm going to call the meeting to order. 6:04 p.m. I'd like to announce that this meeting is being recorded. Jonathan, can you do roll call?
Yeah, Director Brandt.
Here.
Director Geis. Director Freeman.
Here.
Director Hedges.
Here.
Black. We're doing okay. Director Nguyen will be 30 minutes late, and Director Thurlow is here.
Okay.
And Director
Before we begin, oh, sorry.
I just said Director Bertrand's trying to get in. I think he's in now.
Hi, this is Ethan Bertrand.
There he is. Okay, great. Great to have you, Ethan. Okay, before we begin, we'd like to acknowledge the Chumash people, who are the traditional custodians of this land. We pay our respects to the Chumash elders, past, present, and future, who call this place, Anaskoyo, the land that Isla Vista sits upon, their home. We are proud to continue their tradition of coming together and growing as a community. We thank the Chumash community for their stewardship and support, and we look forward to strengthening our ties as we continue our relationship of mutual respect and understanding. We're going to move to the consent agenda. Do any directors have items that they'd like to pull?
I'll
If
move
not, I'll
approval of
entertain
the
a
consent
motion.
agenda.
Motion made by Bertrand. Is there a second?
I will second.
Seconded by Freeman. Any public comment on this motion? Okay, bring it back to the board, and we'll call the question. Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Yes, so it's Director Brandt, Director
Yes.
Freeman,
Yeah, yes.
Director Thurlow. Does Georgie need to be unmuted?
Jonathan,
Yeah.
you cut my tongue out.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
I'll get used to it one day. Director Geis,
Yes.
Director Bertrand,
Yes.
and Director Hedges.
Yes.
Okay, motion passes 6-0 with 1 absence. Okay, we're going to move to the public comment period. This is the time for any member of the public to speak on items that are not on our agenda. If you're here for an item that's on our agenda, we will entertain your public comment when we get to that item. Do we have any requests to speak? Anything in the chat? Okay. I'm going to close the public comment period for now, and we'll return to that if anyone has any comments later in the meeting. Okay, we're going to go to first action item, which is the district COVID-19 response. And for that, I'm going to hand it over to Jonathan.
Great, thank you. So there's not a lot for this item, but just a couple updates, which are the mediation mailer went out to every household in Isla Vista. We didn't notice an increase, like a bump in mediations that's significant at all, but we did see an increase of traffic to our website. So on the day it arrived, so people are aware of the service, and now it's out there, and it's brand. If people didn't see it, it's right here. Spencer designed it. It's very good. It's branded around COVID-19 issues and what people might need right now. So that went out to every household. And the Homeless Services Center is continuing. Emily mentioned like not needing very much financial support from us, only in the couple $100 range. And one of the other things the board had asked me to do was to reach out to Doctors Without Walls. And so I did. And we went on the floor with them, show them what encampments are so they can start providing medical service. We went out last Tuesday, and they're coming back out over the next week. So another thing that's related is the county has created a separate committee about Isla Vista homeless issues during COVID-19, and it first met last Wednesday, and we're meeting again tomorrow. And there's some ideas there, like doing a specific point in time count just right now for who might be out there after everything has changed from the pandemic, looking into restarting the safe parking discussion, and some other ideas. So the update on this item. That's it.
Thanks for that, Jonathan. Are there any questions from members of the board?
Yes, Spencer, Ethan here. Jonathan and Deborah and team, I just want to thank you all for your great work. It's really making a difference. I did a tour of our local encampments yesterday and spoke with some folks out there, and people know about the services that are being offered on Wednesdays and Fridays and are genuinely appreciative. So thank you for everything you're doing with that.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ethan. Any other comments from members of the board? Okay, with that, then I'll open up public comments.
Can I go? You cut out, just so you know.
So I send over here. Yes.
Can you just tell me what are the services on Wednesdays and Fridays? And I know that you're doing mask distribution. What else are you doing on those days?
It's masks are one thing. Hygiene.
Oh, okay. Thanks for letting me know.
Thing. There's food distribution, and we've moved towards having non-perishable food so that people can have meals beyond just Wednesday and Friday at noon.
Okay.
And we're helping people sign up for CalFresh benefits, and we were helping with the stimulus.
Nice. All right. Very good. Thank you. Just an FYI, IVTU started today. Actually, they're doing mass distribution. I'm not IVTU. Beloved AS and IV at the Pardall Center. Sorry. They're going to be distributing masks on Monday and Tuesdays. tried to add more days in when, so they're available. And then eventually they'll be distributing thermometers as well when they come in. They've been ordered. So
That's cool. Thermometers are a new thing.
yeah.
We'll see if we can get them too.
So I'm going to switch over on my Wi-Fi, but can everyone hear me when I'm talking right now? Now?
I hear you now.
When you started saying that, we lost you for a while, and then your audio came back though. So are you, maybe say something again? Maybe you're fine now?
Oh, he's frozen.
No, that's frozen, yeah. It's a good photo of him
Bob.
though.
Hey, while Spencer is unfreezing, one more thing I'll mention in this item is obviously we're now in the expanded phase 2 of reopening, and things look a lot different in Isla Vista with more restaurants open and their outdoor seating areas and having in-person dining and drinking. And I know there's a lot of questions that come along with it, and I know that our staff and Spencer have been working on our local recovery group. So that's just something for all of us to be aware of, that the IVCSD is collaborating with our local businesses to help guide them through this process and work together to come up with solutions for how IV businesses can best reopen.
Yeah, I will mention, let me make sure it's relevant to the item as a response. But yeah, I mean, one of the things that's been talked about as a response by the county, and I just got an email about it yesterday, is the idea of making Pardal a pedestrian walkway so that businesses can go out into the sidewalk like downtown.
Two things that I wanted to throw out there, and one is I'm excited that we've got. I think we finally convened a great holistic group of people to talk about homelessness as it relates to Isla Vista. That includes our Parks District and folks from various departments of the county. And one thing that was also mentioned at that meeting is to get Department of Social Services to come out to our food distribution services center sometime in June. So I'm excited to see that moving forward. More broadly, on business reopening as we go through phase 2, I think the vast majority of our businesses in Isla Vista have been doing really a stellar, excellent job at maintaining or going through the process of reopening in a way that is safe. I know that the governor said today that we can now have barber and hair salons and nail salons can now reopen as well for counties that have met the criteria. So I know that's really exciting. I personally called one of the barbershops here in IV right away. But I do want to caution, because we've seen some bad actors in the community right here who are opening in ways that are either in complete violation of the public health order or in ways that are not sticking to the social distancing practices that our county RISE guide recommends. And I just want to flag that as something that is concerning to me as we start to think about these awesome ideas like closing down Pardal, because I would hate to see businesses that are bad actors benefiting from a really innovative use of our public and collective resources like that. So we're going to continue to monitor that, and just as a community, I think it's important that if we see businesses or people, individuals that are clearly in violation of the order, that we say something, because the pandemic is not over, it's still happening, and we still have to do what we can to maintain social distance so that we can stay safe. Last thing, big thank you to our staff for the mailer that went out on the COVID-19 mediation resources that we can provide. I was really excited to find that in my mailbox, and was happy to work with Jonathan and Deborah on that, and really is making me think about ways that we can use mail in the future as a way of contacting people. I think the more ways that we try to contact people in ways that where they're not always getting contacted, is going to be really beneficial for our communications, our awareness in a community. So that pretty much concludes what I have on this item. Are there any other thoughts from directors or from the public? Okay. Well, thanks everyone. I'm glad we're going to keep this as a standing item on our agenda, just to discuss and have updates as time goes on throughout the pandemic. So thanks. Moving on, we're going to go to item 4.2, which is the Isla Vista Compost Collective update. And with that, I'm going to hand it over again to Jonathan.
Sorry, I was on mute. I turned my video off. It works way better. The connection works way better. I can hear everybody much clearly without the video. That's a tip if anybody wants to try, but we don't get to see you then. So just wanted to thank our Compost Collective staff, Sienna and Jake and Chloe and Eiley. I think they're all on for working on this report. They got it done in record time and well researched, and I feel very confident in moving forward with the Compost Collective program under these assumptions and projections. The basics of this, and I'll let them go through some of the bigger details, but the basics for you all to know are, the first is that we're going to continue using the grant that was received as the vast majority of the funding in 2020, 2021. We can keep operating that way. They've been able to secure some other funding for equipment costs, but for the ongoing operations, it's going to all be funded by the grant we've already received. And one of the things that we talked about when we first took this on is how we can best manage the program. And I think I was recommending one thing at one point in terms of cutting all the positions and merging them into one higher hourly position, 20 to 25 hours. But it's working really well the way it is now. We're able to merge one of the smaller positions into another one for now, and we'll have some extra funding left over because of that, because it's not going to take all 12 hours to merge them. But I know that was one point that we had talked about initially, that I'm changing my recommendation a bit on, in terms of not collapsing all of them into one position right away. It's been great. It's been very, it hasn't been a lot of work to manage at this point. So we can go on with the status quo. There's a lot of, one of the points that the board might be interested in is the cost per house, which is a little high right now at $474. But there's some ideas of how to get it down much lower and expand the use of the program without having to go to every house so people can compost more. And that's included on page 5. And so the next part of that would be the funding outlook. And again, like I said, a lot of the funding is already accounted for the next year, and there's a lot of opportunities to continue getting funding from associated students. And that's a relationship that we've talked about really strengthening and making more formal in the long term because they have been such a big funder of this enterprise. But otherwise, one of the points at our finance committee was that, maybe we should afford to fund this program a bit out of our general operations as a benefit to the community. So we wouldn't need to do that in the next fiscal year. We can look at that again based on how grants are going to fund this next year, but they've been really successful in grants, so we might not need to put much of our general fund into this immediately or in the very near future. And then the rest of the report goes on to explain some of the inventory and equipment needs that are needed for the program to keep moving forward. But I want to just pass it on to Sienna, who's the lead for this program right now. And I don't think you all have had a chance to meet her, but she's been doing an amazing job working with everybody else and getting things moving. And her and I actually just had a meeting this morning with Ivy Rec and Park District at their Lath House and community gardens, and we're talking about the idea of turning one of their plots of land into like a compost center where there'll be a compost pile that we bring the compost to, and some storage space for the equipment. And that was really cool and exciting, so we'll keep working on that. So this is going really well, and I want to turn it over to Sienna to talk more about any details.
Thank you, Jonathan. And it's nice to meet all of you virtually. So I'll give you guys a brief overview of the long-term report. So we've begun by detailing the structure of positions after spring. And as Jonathan mentioned, we'll have the director, and then we'll have an operations manager and marketing manager that would be overseen by the director. And we'll be removing the development manager, who is in charge of the development and funding of the program, and the development manager's role will go under the director's role. And then we'll have our dirt riders that are overseen by our operations manager. And in the report, it details the responsibilities of each role, as well as certain projects that each role will be working on. And then moving on, we talked about program expansion and enhancement opportunities. So we're looking to expand to serving 96 houses to 162 houses in the 2020 to 21 school year. And the year following that, we envision an expansion to 216 houses. And this will be accomplished by increasing our efficiency through the purchase of an electric bike that will allow us to serve more houses, and by securing funding to cover the payroll and materials required to fulfill this expansion. And as Jonathan mentioned, also constructing a compost pile at Estero Park will definitely increase the program's efficiency as well. And another potential project that we're looking into is the implementation of a catering service, in which IVCC would provide our composting services at local events in Isla Vista. And this would be a great community service and a good way to collaborate between organizations. And then another possible project that we would like to implement is a bucket deposit model for households who aren't able to be serviced from us because they can't get off the wait list, but they would still like to compost on their own. And we will also be continuing to collaborate with the AS Food Bank to organize Food on Wheels, which occurs at the end of each quarter. And we collect non-perishable food from residents in Isla Vista, and then we donate it to local food banks in the area. And now we can go to Jake, who is our current development manager, to talk about our funding situation. Thank you.
Hi, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and keep the video off because my internet is not. In the report, we have can everyone hear me?
Yes, now we can.
Now we can.
All right, I think my microphone disconnected. Can you hear me? Cool, okay. So as you can see in the report, there is that there's about 10,000 in difference between funded and the baseline, and just want to address the kind of this outlook was done with the fiscal year that starts on the 1st of July and goes into June 30th. The grant that we have from IVCRC just goes until March of next year. So that's where that comes from. And we'll have to make up that funding in the next couple months and kind of figure out where we get that from. Our plan right now is to rely on our relationships with AS and the IVCRC. And then a couple of other things I wanted to highlight. We just got some advising from the Fund for SB on setting up private sponsorships, which we're hoping to fund other programs like the one Sienna mentioned. And yeah, so we'll kind of do a mixture of funding sources. And then finally, as we're working with the IVRPD on that compost pile, we're gonna be really looking into and doing more research on how we can kind of make the finished compost as a product and have that be another kind of source of income. But yeah, that's basically kind of what we have. If there's any questions, we'd be happy to answer them.
Thank you, Sienna and Jake, for the presentation. I think that this is a very well detailed plan and roadmap for this next year, and it's clear you guys have put an incredible amount of thought, effort, and just have such a commitment to this program that is really admirable to see.
Thank you.
I have thank you. I have one question I was going to ask, because it seems in the report like one of the big things that's going to allow you to grow over the next year is this electric bike idea. Can you talk a little bit about that and its importance?
Yes, definitely. So we actually just received funding from the AS Senate, $9,000 to fund the purchase of this electric bike, and as well as a larger cargo trailer that would be attached to the electric bike. And this would replace the bike that we currently use, which is just a regular bike with a cargo trailer that can hold 4 Home Depot buckets. But with an electric bike, dirt riders will be able to transport to all their different houses much quicker, and they will also be able to store more buckets and therefore serve more houses in the community.
That's great. I'm really excited about that. I see really the biggest thing in this report is that you set a very ambitious and I think appropriately ambitious goal of almost doubling the number of households that you service. And I think that's the sort of growth that's really going to allow the program to both serve the largest number of people, but also get the momentum that it needs to really solidify itself in the community as a long-term, reliable service that people know about and come to rely upon and utilize. So
Yeah,
I'm
definitely.
excited about that.
Thanks.
Are there any other comments or questions from the board?
Yeah, Spencer, I would echo what you just said, just how amazing this is about expanding the reach of this program. But one thing that I've been thinking a lot about is this program is really a great example of a project that we didn't think of on our own, but that was brought to us, and how we were able to quickly respond and adapt our operation for mutual benefit of the ongoing efforts and also our district. So I'm really grateful for this partnership and excited to continue to support it.
Thank you. I love to hear that.
Thank you, Ethan. Are there any other comments from members of the board? I see a thumbs up from Jay. I'll take that as positive. I have one. I see a thumbs up from Father John too. I like that. I've got one other question, because I know when we embarked on this journey, one of the things that we had talked about was the potential of using the space around the community center for a compost pile of some sorts. And I'm wondering if that's still something that's being discussed and entertained.
Spencer, I think you cut off part of your sentence of your question.
Oh. I had asked if we're still thinking about using space around the community center for a compost pile.
I don't think we do a compost pile at the community center as of now. The county is going to provide us like a yellow bin, and there's been proposal of doing like a garden at the community center. But if the plans with the IVRPD go off, then that might be the only pile we will need. It's a pretty big space. What do you think, Sienna?
Yeah, I agree that the compost pile at Estero Park will probably be good.
Great, thanks. Okay, is there any public comment on this item? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. Any other board discussion? I see a clapping emoji from member of the public. Thanks, Rodney. Okay, then with that, again, just thank you, Sienna, Jake, and the rest of your team for all your hard work. Thanks to our staff for advising them, and I'm really looking forward to seeing the growth over the next year. And one last comment that I'll have in terms of potential sources of revenue. I think in the past, you guys have gotten some t-shirts screen printed, maybe done some merch. I know there's probably more than a few of us on this board or in this meeting right now that would be excited to purchase something like that. So just an idea potentially for ways that you can bring money back into the program. Okay. With that, we're going to move on to item 4.3, which is resolution 20-7 to approve the consolidation of the board of directors election with the presidential election. Jonathan, is there anything you want to add on this, or Ross?
And Spencer and Jonathan, I'm going to recuse myself from these next few items because they will be subject to Board of Supervisors approval. Thank you.
Thanks, Ethan.
Okay, let me take that note, Director Bertrand. Yes, so the only point to mention for this item is that we did finally get the estimate cost of the election from the county today, and it's $13,800. So our guess of $15,000 was pretty close.
Exciting. George, I think you got a comment. You might need to unmute him.
Yeah, let me do that real quick. Okay, you're good to go, George.
I'll move adoption of resolution 20-7.
Okay, there's been a motion made by Thurlow. Is there a second?
I will second.
I'll second that.
Okay, I'm going to give that one to Freeman. First by Thurlow, second by Freeman. Is there any public comment on this resolution? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board and we'll call the question. Jonathan, can you do roll call?
Director Brent?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
Yes.
Director Thurlow?
Yes.
Director Hedges?
Yes.
And Director Geis?
Yes.
Okay.
Motion passes 5-0, 1 absence and 1 recusal. Exciting times. This will be our first board of directors election. Well, not our first. Our first since we have been seated as a board of directors. Okay, we're going to move on to item 4.4, resolution 20-8, to consider authorizing staff to apply for FEMA reimbursements. I'll hand it over to Jonathan.
Yeah, so this one is a resolution that Ross and William had prepared for us as a just-in-case measure. We don't have any current plans to apply for anything, but if any potential reimbursements were to come up, this resolution would give us the ability to apply without having to to have a board meeting happen in case it was not near a board meeting when it came up. And so this is a just in case resolution. Ross, do you want to mention anything else on this one?
Only that this is just looping back to what I had mentioned to the board a meeting or two ago about being on the lookout for opportunities to help soften the impact of COVID in terms of the expenditures for IVCSD. I'll cover some of the other things I and members of my firm have been watching for other clients during my district council report, but just trying to do what we can to identify these opportunities, position the district to take advantage if necessary, and then guiding staff through the process to hopefully at some point in the future maybe recoup some of the costs associated with the different responses. That's it. Thank you.
Spencer?
Thank you, Ross. Go ahead, George.
Ross, we had talked about this before. Can we apply for reimbursement of lost revenue from the closure of the Isla Vista Community Center?
At this point, we haven't identified that as an opportunity yet. Most of the funds that are becoming available are more direct response types impacts for things that are being purchased to directly impact or reimburse for PPE, legal fees, and other very direct costs associated with the response. Some of those secondary types of responses, reimbursements, they're being discussed, but we haven't seen any programs come into being as of yet. When they do, obviously, we will forward that information to Jonathan and Deborah, and then if appropriate, put together a resolution along the lines of 20-8 to make sure that the district is positioned to take advantage of those programs if they become available.
Okay. Well, in that case, then I'll move approval of resolution 20-8.
Motion made by Thurlow. Is there a second?
I will second.
Seconded by Freeman. Is there any other board comment on this item? Okay, I'll open up public comment. Any public comment on this item? Okay, I'll bring it back to the board. Just want to say thank you to staff and council for putting this together. Even if it's a proactive measure, I think it positions us well. So thanks for bringing it to us. Okay, with that, we'll call the question. And Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Director Brent?
Yes.
Director Freeman?
Yes.
Director Thurlow?
Yes.
Director Geis?
Yes.
Director Hedges? And
yes,
everybody.
Okay, motion passes 5-0 with 1 absent and 1 recusal. Great. Okay, so I'm going to skip closed session for now. I think we'll do reports first, then we'll go back to closed session for the benefit of the public, so we don't have to kick people out and bring them back in. So I'm going to go over to item 6, reports from members of the board. Do any members of the board have reports that they'd like to give?
Yes, Spencer, if I may. One thing I just want to mention
Go right
is,
ahead.
thank you. Over the past couple of weeks, there was a lot of concern in Isla Vista surrounding this gentleman and the mirror ban, as it's so called. And I just want to thank law enforcement for responding to that, and thank the community members who came forward just to bring awareness to it and to get the issue resolved. There were clearly public safety issues there, and it's just very important that when people feel unsafe, they communicate that, which is exactly what happened in this case. So thank you.
Thank you, Director Bertrand. Any other reports from members of the board? Okay. I just want to say for my report that I really want to echo Ethan's comments. This individual who had the community very concerned, and rightly so, because of some of the statements that he made about May 23rd and adoration for what happened in that day, are incredibly disturbing and are not really an isolated incident. It's really it's the way I see it, an incident that is one of the worst manifestations of this mindset, but that mindset does exist even here in our community, and it's disturbing to see. And so I think I just want to reiterate the thanks to law enforcement for having this guy on your radar. Not many people know, but he was on your radar since almost the second that he stepped back in town, and you were diligently working with some of the people that came forward to build a case against him, and we appreciate that. And we are very thankful to everyone in the community who came forward to share their experiences. And other than that, I think we talked briefly about the homelessness task force, which I think is making some good strides already. So I think that's the end of my report. Okay, well, let's go to reports from committees.
Spencer, Spencer, can I jump in for a sec?
Yeah, go ahead, George.
Okay, real quick. I know that the Foot Patrol's here, so let me just say, when we want the police, we want them right now, and we don't want them to be wasting time or anything else. Although in this case, clearly they were investigating this issue, even as they were being criticized for not acting. I just want to say we in Isla Vista need to remember, when we want the police because we have a bad guy, we want them right now. And we need to remember that during all the rest of the time. So that's my little soapbox. Thank you, Foot Patrol.
Thank you, Director Thurlow, for those comments. Okay, so for committee reports, did we have anything from policy or? Okay, Finance Committee met and had a good discussion about the budget, which I will mostly spare from you because there aren't a ton of changes, and you will see them when it comes back to the board. But I'm excited about the direction that is going. Okay, we're going to go to report from council.
Thank you, Mr. President and members of the board. I wanted to take a few minutes to expand on what I had mentioned at a prior meeting and alluded to during the discussion of Resolution 20-8. One of the primary sources of information for special districts in California is the California Special Districts Association. It's a statewide agency that advocates on behalf of special districts. It is a sister organization to the League of California Cities and the California Organization for Counties, CSAC. And the CSDA put out an infographic a couple days ago that I think really does a good job of explaining in a very direct and simplified way some of the impacts that are affecting special districts because of their response to the pandemic. I did circulate this information to the board of directors in anticipation of this report, and it will be available to members of the public. It is public information, and it can be found on the CSDA website, which is csda.net. or just do a search on your search engine of choice for California Special Districts Association. They have a special COVID section where all this information is available. But something as the board is moving into budget season and beyond, 3/4 of the special districts polled by the CSDA indicate that they are going to face what they deem significant budgetary issues by June of next year, which is to say for the entirety of fiscal year 2020 to 2021, with a large percentage of that 3/4% anticipating significant impacts within the next 6 months. Just over half of the respondents have reported revenue losses just in the past 2.5 months, at about 51%. Half of those, about 49%, just under half, have reported no losses as of yet. But 62% expect to draw down reserves by June of 2021, and 42% of that 62% are expecting to do so within the next 6 months. So many agencies, in order to deal with this, have been cutting staff or services, or will do so in the next 6 months through into June of 2021, with some cuts probably being permanent, at least until further notice. So that is obviously very sobering news. One of the good things that I would like to report in the face of that is, because of its unique position, IVCSD probably has a certain amount of insulation from these impacts, because the revenues for the district are not derived in the traditional way that revenues are derived for other special districts throughout California, because of its status as a special district with its own authorizing statute under the government code. That being said, obviously, we are seeing, and by we, I mean my firm, we represent cities and special districts throughout California. Cities are anticipating impacts as well. Maybe not necessarily to the same extent as what is being shown in this CSDA infographic, but there is some concern ranging from taking note to already taking action across the board for cities who derive their revenues from sales tax and other fees to fund their general funds. So obviously IVCSD is primarily funded through its utility user tax. So whether people come back, how much they're using the utilities may have an impact on revenues moving forward. But obviously so far we're very thankful that IVCSD has not had to have any cuts to programs, services, or staff. The CSDA has been engaging in significant outreach to the state legislature, the state regulatory agencies in certain instances, as well as Congress and the Department of the Treasury. They've been doing this basically every 3 to 6, 7 days since the end of March. Most recently, they reached out to Governor Newsom on the 20th of this month, looking for state support for special districts and specific support for special districts, asking for a number of potential ways to alleviate the impacts, including what they call do no harm, which is do not pass laws that have unfunded mandates where the impacts are borne by local jurisdictions and special districts and not funded by the state, even though the state mandates certain requirements. To balance the relief for individuals against the revenue impacts, some districts are, for example, they provide water and they're not able to do some of the normal water regulatory actions or powers that they normally have. They can't shut off water for non-payment, for instance. And while there are obvious human impacts to that, there are operational impacts to the water districts that is not revenue that comes in to offset the costs associated with providing their services. So the CSDA is urging Governor Newsom to provide direct support to not increase the impacts of any state regulations or state laws on special districts, and just looking for a more balanced approach to how the state goes forward with protecting individuals versus special districts. So we, my firm, are watching what's going on at the state level. We are watching what's going on at the federal level. And as more programs become available or new programs are created that will provide potential avenues of support for IVCSD, we are obviously keeping a watch on that. I did want to just give kind of a general report of some of the things that we've been seeing out there, and to kind of give a little bit broader based perspective on what we are seeing across sectors in terms of special districts, cities, and even at the larger county level. A lot of elected officials are preparing their constituents for having to buckle down probably into the next 12, maybe even 18 months. But as anything becomes available, we'll definitely let staff know to be able to put IVCSD in the best position possible. I can answer any questions if there are any. Otherwise, that concludes my report, and thank you.
Thank you, Ross. Are there any questions from board members? I think George has a question.
Yeah, maybe let me unmute him, man. Where is he?
Can you hear me? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, I just would say this. At the federal level right now, the Trump administration is loosening rules that the EPA has in terms of compliance with health and safety and standards for water quality, air quality, et cetera. I certainly wouldn't want us in any way to be supportive of legislation at the state level that loosens regulation of special districts that provide us with water and any other in any other situations where our public health and safety. I just would not like to see this spread from the federal level to the state level. End of soapbox.
I can
Director
provide a
Thurlow.
quick response to that in to say that we are not seeing anything at the state level. In fact, the State Water Resources Control Board prior to COVID hitting was really focused on the proliferation of certain chemicals in the groundwater, PFOAs, PFOSs, and PFAs, which stand for a chemical that I can't pronounce. But basically, if you've seen the movie Dark Waters with Mark Ruffalo, it has to do with that. And they have no intention in making any of their requirements more lenient in terms of groundwater monitoring and reporting, et cetera. And I know this because one of my clients is a water purveyor in South Los Angeles, in Montebello, south part of Montebello, which is south of Los Angeles, in an urban environment. So we're not seeing anything along those lines. And should anything come up that runs counter to a lot of the policy discussions that I've been hearing, obviously I will flag those. And if there's an opportunity to take part in the discussion one way or the other, I'll make that available to staff and to the board.
Great. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ross. Any other questions for Ross from members of the board? Okay, then we will end District Council's report. We're going to go to report from General Manager.
Great. A couple things to report on. One being the budget. So we're continuing to work on the different parts of the budget and making sure we have all our expenses right and our revenues estimated correctly. I'll give you an update on revenue where we're at right now, which is, I'll just give you some comparisons of taxes from last month compared to this month, March to April. So electricity was 25,000 in March, and then 17,000 for the billings that occurred in April. Gas was 13,000 in March, and then 8,000 in April. Water was 20,000 in March, and then 50,000 in April. And then trash was 23,000 in March, and then about 20,000 in April. So that's about a 75%. April had 75% of the revenue is March. But what one positive thing, I don't know, how do you know? Positive is a hard word, but the Goleta Water District is considering a rate increase that'll take into effect the next fiscal year. That's happening the same day as our last meeting of the fiscal year, and when we're approving the budget on June 23rd. But the president of their board, Lauren Hansen, she sent at least Director Brennan and I a message about it, and I can forward that on to the rest of the board if you didn't get it. But yeah, their rate increases look pretty significant, and so I've asked them to give me what they project to be sending to us moving forward if the rate increases pass. But otherwise, I've made the same request of the other utilities if they could send me what their collections are looking like or what they're projecting. I haven't heard back from them, but keeping an eye on it. We'll just keep, April. Isla Vista looks very different in May than it did in April. I'll say that. So we'll see what the numbers on June 20th look like, and the numbers on June 20th will be the final piece of the puzzle we include for the budget before we approve on the 23rd. A couple other things that are revenue related are that I learned about a good number of transportation and parking and planning grants in the last week, thanks to the county for forwarding some of the information, also the local government commission. So if we didn't have a drop in revenue, there's still some opportunities to fund some of the things we want to get done next year. And we've done a lot of work in the compost and the community center, and we have some big progress in the community center we'll talk about more. And one thing that did come up in November that has not come back to the board but will be coming back soon is the solid waste report in Isla Vista. It feels like that was forever ago, but it was only the end of November when we decided to move forward with that, and we're almost done with it. So we'll get something to the board, one of the meetings in June for that. And that's the end of my report.
Thank you, Jonathan. Any questions from directors to Jonathan? Okay, then with that, we will conclude reports. And we're going to move back up to item 5, which is closed session to conference with real property negotiators. So what we're going to do is we're going to have Jonathan place those of you that are not board members in the waiting room, and then we will readmit you once we reconvene to open session and report out. Thank you everyone for joining us.
Spencer, can you announce read out the closed session announcement?
Yeah, sure. This is Conference with Real Property Negotiators, Government Code, Section 54956.8. The property is 970 and 976 Embarcadero Del Mar. Negotiators are myself, Board President, Bob Geis, Board Vice President, Jonathan Vu, General Manager, Ross Trindle, District Counsel. We are negotiating with the County of Santa Barbara, price and terms of payment.
Great. I'll move the waiting room now.
Action to report out.
No, Mr. President, the discussion took place in closed session in regards to terms and a price for the lease negotiation, property discussion with the county, but no reportable action was taken by the board.
Okay, thank you. With that, the next meeting of the Board of Directors will take place on June 9th, 2020. It'll be 6 p.m. and it'll be here virtually. So we look forward to seeing you then. Is there a motion to adjourn from the board?
I move to adjourn.
I'll second.
Made by Freeman and seconded by Geis. Is there any public comment? Any board discussion? All right. Jonathan, can you call the roll?
Director Brandt,
Yes.
Director Freeman,
Yes.
Director Thurlow, Director Geis,
Yes.
Director Nguyen,
Yes.
Director Hedges.
Yes.
Right. Short meeting
All
today.
right. Great job, everyone. We will see you soon.
Stay safe.